given to us. They measured Max's weight as 31 pounds and they went to the charts. Just so you know, FYI, this is what the chart looks like they use. It looks, I'm going to have you guys use it on your last exam. We'll come back and look at the last exam. It looks terrifying. What it actually is nothing more than this. I'm going to take a step back from it. Okay, this is the exact same data as this, but can you see how it's collected in a slightly different way? This is the exact same data. How is it collected in a slightly different way than the previous, though? Please look at the right place. Look at that bottom axis. Weight in pounds, yes? Now look at the vertical axis. Number of boys at or below that weight. This is a great way of getting percentiles because it doesn't just give you the ones that are at Max's weight, it gives you the ones that are at Max's weight or below. Make sense? So when you go to 30 pounds, you'll notice 30 pounds syncs up with 80, which means 80% of that data was below him. 30 pounds or lower. It's the exact same data, but it's written in a cumulative fashion. This is one of those graphs I hid from you guys on the first day because it made more sense to talk about it now. This is called a cumulative frequency histogram versus just a frequency histogram. Hey, look at that top bar. 33 pounds, 100%. Those were the heaviest kids in the sample. They're in the 100th percentile because they're bigger than everybody. Not technically including themselves in, thank you for that. These kids down here, 20, there's like 4 of them. They're, if you will, the 4th percentile, I suppose. Yeah? So that you don't only have a 0th percentile here because they can't exceed 0, I suppose. But this is a very, very handy way. Now, if you turn that into a chart, into a line, it's called an ogive. Don't memorize this. It's not important to memorize. This is where the doctors got Max's data from. So what they do, it looks confusing. It's actually very, very concise and beautiful. Well, mathematically, you might hate it. It's okay, too. So you find their age in months. I'm going to have you guys analyze this in your last exam. You find his age in months, 24 months, right? Birth to 36 months for boys. They make these charts up to age 20, birth to age 20 or age 2 to 20, I think. Very, very cool. Age in months. Then you find his weight or his length, depending on which one you want to look at. The head girth has a new chart. Kilograms or pounds. We're all in England, so we're going to go pounds. And he's 31. 31, here we go. 31, 24, and we come across where it meets is his percentile. Now you have to do some extrapolation. This is got to be careful about this. See, they show you the 50th percentile, the 75th, the 90th, the 95th. There's your off the chart, Sean. Anything above 95th is considered off the chart. Anything below 5th is also considered off the chart. That's bogus. There's still 96, 97, 98, 99, 99.5, and so forth and so on. But what they did was they said, okay, Max is right about here. He's about a third of the way from 75 to 90. A third of the way from 75 to 90 is 80. 80th percentile. Boom. And I was like, that's pretty clever. And I was okay with that. But then, see, I wasn't there for this checkup. I was there for the next one. And here's why. My wife told me the story. This is how it went down. The practitioner was with my wife said, what do you feed Max? Jen said, food. He's pretty well fed. He's 80th percentile. She's like, oh, yes, food. What kind of food? And Jen was like, I don't know. He loves broccoli. She said, oh, great. Oh, not broccoli. He loves cheese. Oh, cheese. And my wife's like, what are you getting at exactly? And she's like, well, what we do is any children that come in over the 50th percentile, we check the diet to make sure they're not being overfed and at risk for obesity. And when Jen was telling me the story, I started getting hot. And she said, so I asked her, do you also ask the parents of the kids who are under the 50th percentile what they're eating for malnourishment? And then they just kind of like stuttered and stammered a little bit. And then my wife goes, I'm so proud of my wife, look at it. She goes, so it's essentially what you're doing is you're questioning every single parent that they're either over or under feeding their children. Because that's exactly what would happen, yes? The only way you wouldn't get the snap over the knuckles lecture is if your kid came in right at median, 50th percentile. In which case the nurse backpedaled. Good for, and I'm not picking on nurses, I'm picking on people that are statistically illiterate. What they did was they looked at Max's 80th percentile for weight and completely ignored every other piece of data in that data set. There were 3 pieces of data in that data set. He was the 90th percentile for length and the 85th for head girth. Now, if he was 10% for length and 80% for weight. Then I think we have something to talk about. And maybe some kind of a carnival sideshow to take on the road and make a lot of money off of. Right? But the point is, you can't just cherry pick one statistic and be like, no, You see what I'm getting at? This is why I'm so happy you guys are sitting in this class. I love healthcare practitioners. Trust me, I love them all. They're wonderful. My PT is a miracle worker. Dr. Laura, miracle worker. My problem is when decisions are made on statistics improperly interpreted. And that would infuriate me. But Jen took care of it. And it's one of those things, you just gotta look at the entire data set. Look at my kid! Look at that kid! Does he look? I mean, yeah, his head's huge. Does he look like something's wrong with him? Other than that, he just peed himself, probably. Other than that, love you too, buddy. Started watching me 16 years old and hate me. But that's the idea. I mean, look at those numbers. Look at those numbers. They are all congruent with an above average kid. And guess what has happened to him since then? Guess where he is now? He's coming back to normal. Because if you look at that chart again, let's get out to it. I mentioned earlier, as kids get older, they begin to open up, the averages begin to open up. You can actually see that. These are very tight. When you actually look at the birth through 20 years, these things go crazy, crazy wide. And remember how they extrapolate? They drop the pencil point and said, he's about a third of the way. If your pencil point is off by a couple millimeters, you're going to have a 5% difference in percentile, which might make all the difference in interpretation. They're in the problem. Yes, they're in the problem. Make sense? So that's, again, the overriding idea. The overriding idea of percentiles is it gives you a quantifier other than average. So that's what I want to talk about next. Let's turn this off momentarily. Clear, here you are. I want to talk about where we have been and where we're headed next. Because I don't want you to feel like this class is like this crazy journey around in circles. What we're trying to do is, we're trying to develop